to the phone, he will tell you which part of the world the gentleman comes from. Like when Firoz spoke to me, I wouldn't have guessed that he was from Kerala, but Shasha Vanlu would have definitely guessed that he was from Kerala, and probably would have said he's from Iratupeta, Iratupeta, you know, because that was the kind of training that he had kind of gone through as far as his listening skills were concerned. He, by just hearing that tuck, 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 the sound of dialing, he would tell you what the number of the phone from where the call is coming. He could also, by listening to the ambient sound, tell you whether the guy was in a car or whether he was in a railway station, whether he was at the airport or whether he was in somebody's house. And going by Shasha Vanlu's success, the Belgian police started hiring more blind people. Likewise, seeing the success of the Belgian police, even the Dutch police have now started looking at possibilities of using blind people in detective work. Talking about this, I also happened to read a writer by the name of Kendrick Bernard. I don't know if any of you have read this guy. He's written a series of detective stories where the lead character happens to be a blind detective, Detective McLean. He became blind during the Second World War, and he would solve crimes. And the interesting thing was that the criminals, or the guys, the perpetrators of the crime, did not know what clues to hide, because the clues which they were familiar with were all visual clues. You know, whether I've left a gun there or whether I've done. But this guy was looking at more for smells, for textures, and you know, he was using the other senses apart from the eyes. And as a result, the criminals or this one didn't know what to hide, and they were terrified of this guy. And it was a very fascinating story. But I think it brings home a point that the human ability is huge, and I think all of us as individuals tend to favor the vision sense, and tend to undermine people who don't have the vision sense. But the point is, the hearing, the smell, the taste, the touch does communicate very powerfully, and people who have actually mastered those senses generate a lot of information from those senses and can live life. And even in India, like the finance manager of IDBI Bank in Mumbai is K. Ramakrishnan, who's totally blind. 2 days ago, there was a guy called Hari Raghavan who called me up from IBM in Bombay, totally blind guy. So I said, are you still involved with music? So he said, no, I've given music and I've switched to karate. He's actually learning karate. And I said, like, you know, is vision impairment a kind of something that comes in the way of your karate skills? He said, well, if I'm looking at defensive tactics, yes. But my guru says, be on the offensive, you know. And then he said, if I don't land the first blow and immobilize the first guy, then I'm mincemeat myself, you know. So the scene is to hit the guy before he moves at you. So, so this is Hari Raghavan. So the point is, visually impaired people who have actually ventured out to go ahead and do and follow their passions, they have actually achieved. They are living fulsome lives. And what I've realized is that, you know, I like to actually make a quotation over here. I met a guy called Conrad Hunt. Have you heard his name before? Conrad Hunt was a famous West Indian cricketer. He was an opening batsman. And he said, I met him in 1997 in Cape Town, and he said, gentlemen, I was born with a triple handicap. I was born black, I was born poor, and I was born not knowing who my parents were. He also said that 80% of the people of that region didn't know who their parents were. That's another reality. But so he grew up on the footpaths of Barbados, and with no direction or aim in life, till he actually started playing the game of cricket at 8 or 9. And he said something very significant. Cricket taught him the 5 Ds of life. This is the mantra, he said, of successful life. And what were the 5 Ds? He said, I learned to dream. Like, I scored 50 runs today, and people said, hey, Conrad, that's a great knock. That motivated him to aim for 100 runs. He developed a desire of chasing these dreams. And then, when he had to move from scoring 50 runs to 100 runs, he learned the discipline of practice, the third D, discipline. Then he realized that he needed to dedicate himself to the game to actually achieve greater heights. And then there were so many hurdles, so many barriers in the way. He needed the determination to actually overcome those. So when I talk about these 5 Ds of Conrad Hunt, there are some people who talk about a 6th D, especially in India. They say, boss, there's a 6th D. I said, what is that? He said, destiny. So I was very quick to respond to that. I said, if you have a 6th D, then there is also a 7th D. And what could that be? Disaster. So I said, let's leave 6 and 7 out, stick to the 5, and work on our life. So these 5 Ds is something that actually, when I look back at the cricket project that I was involved with, is exactly these 5 Ds that I was trying to transfer into the lives of blind people through cricket. And what I realized over the last 15 years of organizing national, state level, zonal and World Cups, that these were all events. And I realized when I look back that it was purely an exercise in event management. And in fact, Firoz was asking me, like, what are your plans for the future? And I said that I am at the threshold of writing to the World Blind Cricket Council and resigning from my post as president. I'm resigning from my responsibilities as the chairman of the Association for Cricket for the Blind of India. And I'm planning to launch a new line of, or a new strategy, which is cricket for development. The whole idea is to use cricket to bring blind people out of homes, to use cricket to actually transfer the 5 Ds, to use cricket to show the community that these guys whom you've written off as no-gooders, sitting at home as liabilities, actually have abilities. And then to use iWay to actually disseminate the relevant information that will help these kids to get into the community level schools and the community level programs and become part of the community. This is, in a nutshell, a very crude way of what we are planning. And we are actually planning to do a pilot project in the state of Jharkhand, tying up with an NGO called Nav Bharat Jagran Kendra, which is an organization which works in what we call community-based rehabilitation. So that is going to be the laboratory where we are going to experiment and try out cricket for development, cricket for mainstreaming, to use the power and the passion for cricket that India has to actually bring blind people onto the mainstream and participate in mainstream life. So that's something which we are working on. And what we also are hoping is that we were actually looking at doing this in February 2010, but I think we will probably put it off for 2 more years and actually look at cricket for development around the country in different states. Once we are confident about what we've done at Jharkhand actually works, we will replicate that model in other parts of India, and then have a base from where we pick up the 112 best cricketers from across the country, divide them into 8 teams, and launch something called the Indian Blind Cricket League. Not quite IPL, but this, to my mind, would have a lot of community-based participation because players have emerged from the community, and this could be a sustainable kind of thing because the community is involved. Right now, the events that we are organizing, it entirely depends on how much of energy we as organizers are able to put in. If we stop putting in the effort, the events also don't happen. So it's basically, the blind cricketers are going to benefit by it because through the game they are getting absorbed into the community and the community way of life. And the other thing is that the community then participates in actually supporting this kind of initiative. How much time do I have?
Another 5-10 minutes because we want to ask more questions.
Okay. Then coming to the Kishore Kumar part of life. I was in Pakistan in 2004 and we had a kind of fundraising dinner at Karachi. And there was this blind lady who came and sang. And she was outstanding. She was really good. And after the function, we went for a match at Islamabad. And when we were traveling from Islamabad to Lahore by bus, friend and I, we were sort of talking, and I was trying to say that, look, when a person in India, when a person is blind, immediate advice is Sangeet Sikha lo. Saying that if you don't have eyesight,